Hello everybody, this is Shane from Shane's Books and Review, and I hope that you are having a wonderful day and that you guys found a good read this last week. Now this week I was going to be reading Broken Angels by Richard K. Morgan, which is the sequel to Altered Carbon, which is known as the Takashi Chronicles. First things first, I need to give Richard K. Morgan a small clap because he's done something in his sequel to Altered Carbon which a lot of people don't do. Instead of just rewriting the same book, just adding a couple different things to it or changing where it's at, he's wrote an entirely different book. Man, kudos, thank you. That was an incredible thing. Now it has been, like I mentioned before in the previous video, a long time since I've read these books. So it's almost like reading them brand new for the first time. Now, as the book opens, Takashi is on Sanction 4, and he's a member of, I think it's Carrera's Wedge. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the first name correctly, but it's a mercenary group. But while he's being recanted, to be put back together to go back out and fight some more, he meets this pilot that's like, hey, there's this Martian artifact. And that's where the book really kicks off, is he pretty well dumps the Wedge and goes off with this ragtag group. Broken Angels opens about 30 years into the future for the rest of the world. So, imagine political shifts and wartime shifts, or just the general philosophy of human beings over 30 years, or technical advances, etc. For Takashi, that was like a blink of an eye. He signs out, he leaves planet Earth, it's direct needlecast to another place, and that's where the book opens. For him, he's got subjective time and objective time, which is actually a phrasing that he put into the book, being Richard K. Morgan, and well done, because it kind of puts another layer of enjoyment into it, because he might be close to 40 years old, but for the rest of the world, that's been like 150, 160 years. At what point will Takashi be considered a meth because of the longevity, objectively or subjectively, that he has seen? It's good stuff. Sci-fi that makes you think. I don't know if it does as well as sci-fi that doesn't make you think. I do know for people like me, and probably people like you guys, that makes it just so much more enjoyable. I don't need to be handled with mitts. Throw it at me. And that's what he did in this book. There was a couple of concepts that I personally haven't read before. I don't know if it's been done, and I hesitate to tell you guys about it because it might ruin something for you if you know it's coming. So maybe I'll put a spoiler warning and an air horn about the 3/4 mark, and then really get into some of the things that I enjoyed about this, because it was a very enjoyable book. Yeah, so let's get into it, shall we? Alright, now, whenever it opens up, Takashi, of course, is in a new place, and there wasn't like a whole lot of build-up. It was just, here you go, here he is, and this is what's happening. Yeah, I really like that kind of a thing. I've mentioned this before. It's like having somebody come up to you and start talking to you like you're in the middle of a conversation. You already know the person. You can just drop all the inhibitions and get on with it. And that's the way the book opens, which, again, another check mark. Now, as far as sci-fi goes, there's a lot more sci-fi in this book than there was in the previous. The previous book, to me, was kind of like a noir, or a noir, however you want to pronounce it. It's like GIF or JIF. By the way, what do you guys think? JIF or GIF? There's all kinds of arguments about it, but it's actually both. Anyhow, I digress. In Broken Angels, there's a couple of references in memoriam of Takashi thinking back to Kristen Ortega, his previous love interest in the first book. There is a little bit of objectivity whenever it comes to the sexualism, but I don't think that we're unfortunately going to be able to get away from stuff like that in sci-fi books. Altered Carbon was more of a noir. It was that dirty, gritty underbelly, and it was also a whodunit. And there were some tinges of sci-fi that was put in there in between the direct needlecast, the stack, or where somebody would be stored, the mind, consciousness, human spirit being able to be stored inside of this chip, so that if something bad does happen to you, or if you've got enough money, You can simply move to another body. And of course, that doesn't come without consequence in the books by any means. But there's so much new stuff that was added into the second book. It was quite phenomenal. There's books that I've read in the past that really made me think. Books that made me question myself or the things around me or situations that I was in. And this was a different sort of thinking about things. I found myself while I was reading this trying to imagine a world that was so far advanced, and yet they don't see it that way, which is kind of like ours today. And of course, there is more of the Envoy mentality, the thought process, how he deals with things. Now, a lot of the times, this special Envoy thing, I could attribute that to common sense and just having that good gut feeling. It's the same thing with people that do diagnostic type work, such as doctors or lawyers or other people, on being able to read a situation, cut it down to its basic components, and then figure out what solution they need to get to the achievable end that they want. And I'm not so impressed with this whole Envoy thing. I also find myself enjoying it because I like to see somebody's take when it comes to mental gymnastics. And that's what that amounts to, is being able to absorb everything, take everything in, and just spit out what's most important. And it's fascinating, it really is. I don't want to detract from it. I don't want to say it's not a good thing, but in the books, it certainly is one of his most powerful tools, being that he is this. And it does come with benefits that normal people wouldn't have, such as where he's working currently. He is with a affiliated group nicknamed the Wedge, and if he happens to die, then he will be probably immediately put into a new body, or if his body he's currently in is so severely damaged it can't be repaired before he needs to go do something, then he can be put into another frame. But of course, in the last book, he ended up in such a nice body, he doesn't want to leave that one, even whenever it gets severely damaged, as you can see it coming. Some of the main points in this book is there's more about the Martians, which really cool. There's, of course, the wartime political type things that are in there. And with the way that he wrote the book, that would be unavoidable, but it's not intrusive on the read. It's not one of those things where an author will drone on and on and on about a subject, and you're like, oh man, we really just don't care. Can you get on with it? It doesn't happen that way at all. It's just enough in the plot lines to make you go, oh, so that's why they're doing that. And so that's the full circle. That part of it was executed well. I'm not going to say it needed more or less. It was just the right sprinkling to keep the storyline moving right on along. He ends up with a ragtag group of people. And essentially he goes AWOL, which was, he left a note that said, be back. And he's gone for months. Well done, Takashi. Because he found something that was interesting to him. So he chased it out. Now, as far as visualization in this book, there's a lot of different scenes, and there's actually some things that are kind of traumatic, really, if you think about them. One is the internment camp where he finds Tanya. Tanya's an archaeologist that found something big. He has to rescue her, but imagining or putting myself in that situation where that person has gone through so much and to the point of like mental collapse. And Takashi has a way of bringing her back around, which again feeds into that male machismo. But this is where I can't really tell you anything else. You just got to read it. The ending was good. There was actually spatterings of voodoo through it, which was kind of cool, but that really didn't take off. It was something that could have been highly interesting, and the parts of it that were in there really were. There's mentions and hints and just little teasers of stuff that's there, especially whenever they're going to assemble the rest of the team and you meet a character in a top hat and you find out a little bit more about Hand. Now, before we get to the spoilers, I'm going to almost end this video because I want people to be able to get my impression, what I thought of the book, and what I think of it before we get into it. What kind of read is it? Is it an afternoon read? Is it an evening read? Is it a Saturday or Sunday read? It's just long enough. Most people will take 2 or 3 days with it, I would guess. But it's also one of those books that is a page turner. It kept me very engaged and I couldn't stop. I just could not stop reading this book once I started. I found myself wanting to pick this book up at every moment that I could until I got through it, which is a phenomenal thing for me to say. Personally, I think you need to pick a time when you know that you're going to have a big space that you can get a big chunk of that read and just hit it. Because as soon as you start going in, if you enjoyed the first one, you're definitely going to enjoy this one. Do I recommend getting it if you're into sci-fi? Yes. These check marks right through here. If you like typical sci-fi, if you like space, if you like really unique things that you probably haven't read before, and ideas in conjunction to that universe, really well done, really well executed. It got me super excited. I didn't jump in the air and do a fist pump or anything, but I certainly enjoyed where it was at. There's not so much the personal development of this character and this character and this character, but let's be honest, Takashi is not an individual for personal relationships, so there's not going to be a lot of that in this book. So if you're looking for relationships and that kind of a thing, not going to see so much of it, I don't think. Even if there would be a fourth book. No, I'm not misspeaking. There's 3 right now. But I don't know if there's any plans on Richard K. Morgan to release a 4th one. If he did, I would certainly get it based off of the 2nd one just to see what he's done with it. The next book we're going to be reading, of course, is his 3rd book in the Takashi universe, which is Woken Furies. Especially with the way that Broken Angels closed. It could be some interesting things on the other side of that. So we'll see what happens there. Now, for those of you that don't want spoilers, this is the time. Hit that subscribe button, click the like, and share if you found anything that was interesting in here. I would certainly appreciate it. It will help the channel grow, and it actually does do something if you click that like. Beyond that, as usual, the information for the book and the author will be in the description down below. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful day. Now, if you happen to find a good book in between now and the next time that we have a video, make sure you guys leave it for me down there in that description. And I will see you guys later. Now, for the rest of you that want those spoilers, cue a timer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh my god, you really want the spoilers. Okay, so here it is. The book opens up with Takashi in, like I mentioned previously, section 4. And you've got Carrera's wedge, but that's just a thing to move the book, like I mentioned previously. Whenever it comes to a middle point in the book where they have to go to for what things were discovered, the absolute nuke and devastation of an entire city. With that population, we'll call it a city, even though it's now Carrera's wedge. Just so that you know, is a military / renegade type of a group that Takashi is a mercenary for. Then that group was manipulated into nuking a city so that the area would be clear because of fear of radiation poisoning, and there was plenty of radiation for sure. The second thing to know is that you've got this new discovery. There was a gate that was found by Tanya and her original archaeological group that went out there, and they did not document this huge warship that they found. And that's what it is. It is a gigantic warship that the Martians had that is kind of locked into a fight that just will never end, because the other side that wasn't the Martians and the Martians, they both had technologies that were so incredible that there's no way that a entity could survive it. 2 ships that are automated are just fighting it out pretty well for eternity until something breaks on one of them, and then that will be the victor. So far, I think that the book said it was about 100,000, 112,000 years that they had been fighting this out with no real win. And that's kind of the thing about war, isn't it? The other things to know is that, of course, Takashi has real problems with developing any kind of emotional attachment towards people, which that was kind of cool that since he does have that issue, that he was thinking about Kristen Ortega, in my head anyway, because I really liked her. She was a really strong female character in the first book, and there really wasn't a really strong female character in this book. He could have added a strong female role in that, but the most we had was a domineering sex kitten is pretty well it. There wasn't anything that was I am on the female side. So to me, the book really wasn't balanced in that. There are books that I've read that have really strong female roles that are so overdone, it's like they've become masculine. This one was lacking that. Okay, I can accept it, but would I have liked it if it did have a strong female in there alongside of him? Yes, I most certainly would have. Now, you can say that Tanya was a strong female in a way, because you got to think about her situation. She was in an internment camp. She was brutalized and just thrown to the side, beaten and just used up and left a husk of a human being. And Takashi, through his masculinity or Envoy training or whatever, was able to bring her back because of this Envoy trick. That I didn't care for, because I can understand where it was going. I can understand that it's the intimacy between the people that would make that psychic link so they could get into the brain and bring on some healing. But I mean, no, I didn't much care for that part of it. There needed to be something to bring her back so that she could be a part of the book. I personally think that it should have been psychotherapy. There should have been some type of virtual thing that was done for her instead. Now that we have that out in the open, that was the one thing in the book I really just did not like. It did add a dimension to her, and that could have been more developed. It was something that could have been a lot more prevalent, is her mental state and her overcoming her mental state to be able to perform and do the things that she did in the book. That would have been a better way, in my opinion, but I'm not the guy that wrote the book, so it was his choice. And did it add another piece of sci-fi type stuff to it and develop more of what the envoys were? Yes, it did. But again, a little conflicted about that. As far as sci-fi goes, you've got everything. You've got nanites, you've got a wormhole opening gate that goes beyond anything that we can comprehend, and them trying to figure out how to open it. You've also got a huge, massive Martian warship, and then you've got the battles. That was one of the things that really keyed me up, was just that battle that was described in between the Martian ship and the other ship. Because, whenever we think about war, we think about Earth and how things happen here. A lot of things are sneaky. A lot of things are tactical. There's a lot of smart weaponry these days with drones and missiles, etc. What I'm assuming people probably don't think about much is a space battle. If you were to use our type of weaponry that we have right now, it would take so ever long. Even if we had something that was like a magnetic gun that could super accelerate things out of it. Yes, I know there's a term for it, but I'm afraid I'm going to use the wrong one, so that's why I'm describing it that way. Those projectiles would take so long to cross a solar system or from one planet to another that, it would be pointless, really. I think that's the reason why a lot of sci-fi authors resort to lasers or plasma or whatever, because most people think of it happens at the speed of light. For the most part, that does. But all that was like stripped away. In that battle, there was some things that were coming, but it was all happening in a hyperspatial type of an arrangement, which that makes it so much more interesting, because instead of firing a weapon and then have to wait hours, days for that weapon to get there, then you have like immediate, here it is. They're within range, okay, things are exploding and they have to defend themselves, but it's all automated, so they're a captive audience just watching it on a screen until things go really awry. Other points in the story, let's go back a little bit. You have where Takashi's trying to get everything together. So he's trying to get the archaeologue, he's trying to get equipment, he's trying to get to where he can get to this. And he runs into Hand. Hand is a wannabe voodoo, I'm not going to say priest. He definitely wants to be and portrays himself as a voodoo type person. And that was kind of an interesting sprinkling. It could have been more. There could have been a lot more to that because Scimitar. Anyway, God of Death. Whenever Scimitar starts popping up in Takashi's head, where did that come from? Was it just that he was so deranged at that point, whenever they were getting ready to open the gate, that this was popping up in his head? Was it the radiation that was causing it, or the medicines, or whatever? Why was that guy there? Now, it was kind of resolved in a way, and then it was put away. No more was really mentioned until the end, and Hand got his. That could have been an interesting element. It really could have. That could have been developed a little bit more. It could have been put in there, and what if it was just a bunch of people pretending to be voodoo type people, but they weren't? There was a couple of the encore type intuition things that came into play at the end of the book. It had to do with Tanya, and the whole reason why the first archaeologue dig didn't go the way that was supposed to. There's a reason why that paperwork wasn't filed. Even at the end of the book, whenever he was getting rid of the inhibitor on the back of his neck and was having to fool his body and his emotions through the Envoy training so that he didn't realize what he was doing, that's really out there. Could you imagine having the ability to block yourself from yourself mentally so that your upper mind, like, I need to do this, doesn't really realize what you're doing physically? Was it believable? No, not so much. But was it enjoyable? Yes, very much. Simply because, the amount of self-will, self-awareness, and what a human can do, that is definitely superhuman ability. He had become attached to his ragtag team, and he was much more loyal to them now at this point than he was with the people that he was originally working with, which was Carrera's Wedge. There apparently was a traitor amongst them, as well as the Tanya issue. Whenever everything clicks for Takashi, he definitely has one of his moments. Pretty well defeats everybody except for Carrera. Carrera opens up the gate, he goes through it, and Takashi, even though he is, I imagine him dragging a leg behind him, guts hanging out, and one eyeball dangling at this point, and growing something out of his forehead because of how far along the radiation sickness would be, follows him through that gate and gives him his just dessert. That's why I'm saying that I'm curious to see where it's going to go from here on the third book. I wonder if it's going to be, again, another completely different thing. I wonder if it's going to be a continuation of sorts of the last two books, or what situations Takashi's going to get in. This is a check mark, a hallmark of a good book. Whenever you read about a character, and then you get to the point where you want to know what's going to happen to that character. And it's always sad to me whenever I finish a series that's well wrote, because whenever I do, then I know that's it, and I don't want to finish it. And again, I don't want to finish this next one, but I'm going to. And I don't think I did originally. I think I read about halfway through it and stopped. Not because it wasn't a good book. Rather, it had to do with I just didn't want to let go of the Takashi universe yet. This has been Shane from Shane's Books and Review. This is the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed parts of it, and I hope that you enjoyed the last book that we read. Now, the next one will be Woken Furies, which is the third Takashi book. Hope you found a good book in between the last one and this one. If you did, let me know about it in the description down below, and we'll read it together. As I mentioned previously, don't forget to subscribe and click like or share, because sharing, after all, is caring. Actually, it does do something for the channel, which is pretty cool. Beyond that, hope you guys have a wonderful day, enjoy your week, and enjoy your next book. This has been Shane, and you guys have a great day.